I was with some friends yesterday, and one of these friends loves to tell me jokes for my sermon preparation. Needless to say, most of them never will see the light of day. But yesterday they then said to me, "What are you preaching on this night?" And I told them we were doing the last words of Jesus. "Oh, have I got one for you?" So evidently, while Jesus was on the cross, and after he had said to John, "Look, this is your mother," he then said, "John, come here. John didn't know what to do. He said, "Come here." Jesus looked down at John. "John, I can see your house from here." I said, "Steve, it's questionable, but it's clean, and so I'll use it for you." What was the first prayer you learned as a child? Was it maybe grace to be said before a meal? Or was it a prayer that your mom or dad taught you maybe before you were going to bed? Remember, "Now I lay me down to sleep. Pray the Lord my soul to keep. If I should die before I wake, I pray the Lord my soul will take." Followed by "God bless mommy and daddy," and a whole list of additions, right? And then, amen, and off to bed. Parents of faith have always taught their children to pray. And so did Joseph and Mary. The prayer that they would have taught Jesus was called the evening prayer, and was taken from Psalm 31, verse 5. "O Lord, thou art my refuge. Into thy keeping I commit my spirit." But not only did every child learn the words, every adult Jew would say them each night as they prepared to sleep. "O Lord, thou art my refuge. Into thy keeping I commit my spirit." There on the cross, as he faced the sleep of death itself, Jesus used the words he had learned as a child, words that come to mean even more for him as an adult. "Father, into thy hands I commit my spirit. I commit my spirit." Think of the committal of Jesus' will that was embodied in those 4 words. The quest that he had undertaken to be God's person, to obediently do his Father's will. That was no easy road. And it became all the more difficult as throughout his ministry he began to really discern what the cross was going to mean for him. Think back to the beginning of Jesus' public ministry, when he was baptized by John in the Jordan, how he had heard the words of God assuring him of his purpose and acceptance. And then how immediately on the heels of those words, of that affirmation, he was sent into the desert and tempted to take shortcuts. Turn these stones into bread. Take a dive and let the angels catch you. Dazzle the crowds. All of them to skirt around God's plan for his life and to try to do it in other ways. Jesus' task, his purpose, was to win the world, but he refused to do it through gimmicks. It would take the gift of his life. "Be gone, Satan. Get behind me." Jesus faced that same struggle in the Garden of Gethsemane as he wrestled now up front and almost in his next day with God's will for his life. And none of us can know the depths of that struggle or the agony of his soul, as the witness says that he sweated drops of blood. But we can easily understand his pleading words, "Father, if there is another way possible, let this cup pass me by. Let me not have to drink of it. Surely we can find another way to accomplish what you want to accomplish that doesn't include my demise." Then the words of final and complete surrender and obedience to God's purposes. Not my will, but thine be done. From that moment on, there is no equivocation, no vacillating in Jesus' purpose to do what God wished. He would be obedient in all things, so that God might be glorified in him. Jesus turned over his will into God's hands. He was sure that God had purpose for his life and death, to redeem the world. No matter what the cost, he would accept it because he trusted God. Trusted that God would keep him safe and secure through the darkness that was coming. Trusted that as God had been faithful to him in the past, God would be faithful now. This is why Jesus could finally say, Father, I commit my spirit to you. But in those words, there was more than a commitment of his will. There was also the commitment of his very life. So his childhood prayer, spoken in the unfettered wonder of young life, becomes now his dying prayer. And in doing so, he says, take all that I am and all that I have done and use it for your glory. John records some beautiful words about this in his 17th chapter. He says, Jesus says, I glorified you on earth by finishing the work that you gave me to do. So now, Father, glorify me in your own presence with the same glory that I had before the world was created. It is because of his confidence that he had done God's will, that Jesus has now accomplished the redemption of the world, our redemption, that he can commend all that he had done, everything, to God's purpose and care, and rest confident that when the morning breaks, all will be well. In his self-surrender, in his obedience and trust, Jesus had been faithful to God's will for his life. Some of his friends may have felt it was all wrong that day, that evil had won the battle. Their spirits, no doubt, were in the dumps. What had these past years been about? Were we just fools? How could it have gone so wrong? But beyond the apparent appearances that day, something had gone eternally right. Sin and death had been conquered. Jesus had drained the cup to its bitter depths. The price of salvation had been paid in full. That's why Luke records that the veil of the temple was torn from top to bottom, ripped in two. The great curtain that hid the Holy of Holies, the place where the very presence of God dwelled, the place where only the high priest could go, and even for him only once a year, on the great day of atonement, to plead for the sins of the people. It was as if the way to God's presence was thrown open to all. As if the heart of God was laid bare. The symbol of a hidden, inaccessible God was gone now. The birth, life, and death of Jesus tore it in two and gave us direct access to God. We no longer need anyone to plead for us. We can go to God in our own name, and by our own prayers, plead for ourselves. The commitment, Jesus said, was made into your hands. Jesus is saying, I'm leaving it all with you now. There's nothing more I can do. The outcome is now within your power. Whatever it is, whatever it will be, it's all right with me. That meant that his life's work was left there on the cross. All the conversations, all the persons he had touched and healed, all those who had heard his words and listened and responded, as well as those who had heard him and turned away. followed close by, those from afar, those who were loyal and those who were untrue. Every life has such a picture in it. And what do you do when you come near the end of the road and there is still so much that could be done? There comes a time when we must all do what Jesus did. Trust whatever it is, however it is, for whatever it is, to God. And to leave it there, trusting, knowing that it will be safe there. And that meant that Jesus' soul was left there too, in the loving hands of God. Secure in God's keeping, safe, my will, my life, into your hands. It is safe there. Even on the cross, Jesus died like a child falling asleep in his parents' arms. And the Roman centurion, used to seeing many people die on a cross, knew in his gut that something was really very right about this moment. Surely this man was innocent. This man was the Son of God. The magnet of the cross had begun its work even as Jesus died his last breath. We've been talking about Jesus' great and final commitment of himself, but that act was not possible, and only possible because his whole life had been a series of deepening commitments at other times and places along the journey. The possibility of a final commitment is mitigated if one has never made a choice of commitment. And that is Jesus called us. Come, follow me. Come and join the glorious privilege of being builders of God's kingdom. Come and stand beneath my cross, that my prayer might also be your prayer. God, into your hands, you, and you, and you, and you, commit our spirits. Amen.